right. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon. Because I really don't know where in the world you are at, but you are in the right place wherever you're physically at because you get to be on the show with us today. And so I'm just so excited about, uh, and you guys know, like 200 and some episodes, I keep saying I'm excited, right? But I am because I get to speak with so many different people that are doing things in our life that are moving the needle, that are making a difference, that are taking what is a life of sometimes just habit and not even routine. I mean, it comes to a routine, but it's not an intentional routine. It's just this is what I do every day. I get up every morning, go to work, come home. Get up every morning, go to work, come home. Then I have Saturdays with soccer or whatever it is with my kids, and then I have Sundays and I go to church, and then I get to go every morning, go home, get up every morning, go. And so there is so much more to life. And so when you figure out what your calling is, and you figure out what your purpose is, and you figure out how that you can serve others, and I'm going to ask Alan, I'm going to ask you this question in a minute. Do you think, I'll give you a chance to think about it as I'm introducing, but do you think it's possible to live in purpose and not serve others? And so think about that for a second, because that'll be a question that we're going to talk about. On the hand, I don't know if it's possible to live in purpose and not serve other people. I guess if you lived in a forest in the land somewhere, but I'll let you answer that. And so excited about breakthrough, excited about what Alan's going to talk to us about today, and what we're going to be able to unpack during this show. This is your first show and you get to the end, go ahead and hit the subscribe and notification, because I promise you there are many more like this, that we just have so much fun getting to know people. I've asked Alan to tell his story because I want to know more about him and what he does and how he makes it happen. But if we get to know him first, then what he does makes sense. And so many times somebody will say, well, I'm an engineer and I hate it. Well, why? We want to know why you hate it, right? We want to know like what, or I'm an engineer and I love it. I just built a bridge that, gets 10 million cars go over it every year. Whatever that is, we want to know who you are and why. And so, Alan, thank you for being on today. Thank you for taking your time with me. I know, the conversations and the things that we've done before to be able to get to this. I'm just so excited to have you on, to have these conversations, and then to hear your story. So please go ahead and tell us who you are, your story, and then we'll chop it up after that.
Well, first, I want to thank you for having me on. Love telling my story. I am the son of a Vietnam veteran who basically, when he got back from Vietnam, couldn't find a job, so had to become an entrepreneur. And then that led me to later in life becoming an entrepreneur myself. Tried to do the whole went to college, got an accounting degree. I joke around that I'm a recovering accountant. Everybody kind of laughs at that. Never have worked in public accounting, but wound up serving in the military. Got an ROTC scholarship to go to college. I joke around that I'm a certified entrepreneur because I used to jump out of perfectly good airplanes in the military, which people say is crazy. One of the things I tell people is the first airplane that I ever rode in, I never landed with. So from that aspect, it's one of those things, people say that entrepreneurs are crazy. So yeah, that's that. And then, so from there, wound up leaving the military and then started competitive fencing. I had fenced a little bit in college, in high school, and then really got into it, really enjoyed competing, wound up making the Olympic squad for the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. I joke around that, I realized that was my purpose in life, was to train and help other people realize, what they could achieve. So for the next 35 years, that became, me teaching teenagers how to beat each other with metal sticks and providing them with opportunities to go to college, get scholarships. I've sent about a dozen kids to the Air Force Academy on presidential appointments. And then most recently, over the last 5 years, I have kind of retired from the fencing thing and become a tech entrepreneur, and am now running a thing called Launchpad that is training tech entrepreneurs how to take an idea of something that they say, hey, this is a huge problem, and how do I turn this into a high growth tech company, which has then led to me also raising a fund to help these entrepreneurs be able to raise money and then fund creating the next Uber, Airbnb, Etsy, that's out there. So that's kind of how currently, my purpose in serving others is basically helping people take their ideas and actually execute them so that they can actually, build companies.
Oh my gosh, so cool that you think of like you grew up, you had a dad that was an example,
Yep.
that kind of said, okay, this is what it's like, and then to never, had to spend time, in the workforce and figuring out to go. It was funny in your story. You said that you jumped out of perfectly good planes, and I always think when people say that because I think that, I've been skydiving once and would love to go do it way more, but a plane is not perfectly good. There's this big old hunk of metal that is very heavy that somehow figures out how to be up in the air. And so, if that doesn't make sense, then it makes perfect sense to jump out of one. The way that I look at it, because what makes that thing be able, and then as heavy as they get is, like a C, whatever the C-140 or whatever the military giant one that carries all the tanks and stuff, how
Yep.
that gets up in the air and then flies.
Well, it's kind of like looking at battleships. It's like, okay, how do you have something that weighs, so many tons of metal floating in the ocean? It's like, why doesn't it just sink? And then,
right to
yep,
the bottom. Because when I stick a piece of metal in my bathtub, it
yep,
goes straight down, right?
yep, exactly.
Oh yeah, so it's amazing when you start thinking through some of the things that we do and that we say. But I do want to talk about identity. I've been fortunate enough to train Olympic athletes, but I've been to them, and I remember all the Coca-Cola stuff in 1996. It was all around in Atlanta, going to Olympic trials in Atlanta, as an athlete. But it just, to be able to be part of a team, to be part of it. What was, I guess, how does your identity shift when you make a team compared to what it was before? Maybe just walk us through your journey with your identity.
So for me, it was, for a good 8 to 10 years, in fencing, we would say I was a swashbuckler / hacker, not anybody who's achieved anything. Once I put my mind to it and then started really evaluating the performance of when I was competing, and then I attribute my success into when I would lose, instead of feeling sorry for myself, I would sit there and watch the people who won and then watch until they lost and figure out how they got beaten until I got to the finals. And for me, then trying to do the stuff that required me to be the best and then having the discipline to do it over and over and over and over again, learning and watching what was winning instead of trying to do the same thing over and over again. The definition of insanity is do the same thing and expect different results. My thing is find out what is winning, learn the new things, add it to my repertoire of stuff. But once you make a team and once you achieve in fencing, you have Olympic points, you're now labeled, an elite athlete. And, it really isn't anything that you kind of wear a t-shirt or anything, but you now recognize that the skills and the discipline and the thing that I've done, has made me be in that top 1%. It's the same thing when you go through like the military and you're going through like airborne school or ranger school or any of the elite stuff. It's like that hunger to want to be better, and that then becomes part of your personality, that people identify you and go, okay, he may not be the most gifted person, but I've never, been accused of being lazy. And a lot of people say that I'm long in the tooth, old, and they're like, you outwork most 20 and 30-year-olds. I was like, yep. So,
Yeah. No, when I think about what you're saying and applying it to business principles or businesses, and I know you have Launchpad now that helps folks with that. But some people say, well, where you can win is when talent meets opportunity.
mm-hmm.
But what I'm hearing you say, yeah, talent, you got to have some talent. For me, like in track, I'm only so fast, right?
Yep.
And God ever gave me it or not, it is, you could be, if you don't have that talent, then it's not going to happen. Then you have the opportunity, and then you took advantage of the opportunity. But it sounds like discipline is another factor that becomes even bigger. Maybe
Yeah,
talk a little bit about that.
I joke around that, everybody's motivated and excited, but eventually, it's kind of like relationships. Eventually, things become ordinary. People get into a routine, and if you don't have that enthusiasm, the thing that carries you farther than everybody else is that discipline to go, you know what? I joke around, the only two places that I know of where having discipline is required in training is sports and the military. In the business world, people take, if they do get training at work, they do it once and then they just subside on, their one repetition of learning how to do something. You can't do that in sports. You can't do that in military. In the military, if you're not currently engaged, you're always training. If you're in sports, you're competing, you're losing, and then you're training on trying to get better. And, that becomes hard. And when the motivation stops or it's not fun, that's where discipline kicks in. And if you don't have that discipline, or you don't have somebody giving you a kick in the ass to kind of keep that discipline going, then, people are going to falter. They're going to rest. They're going to go, okay, well, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll procrastinate. It's like, no, if you don't have that discipline, you need to surround yourself with either systems or people that are giving you that discipline, in my opinion. So,
Gotcha. One of the things that I think you just alluded to in conjunction with discipline, and I think you even said the words, is the consistency.
yep.
Because what happens that I see a lot of people who try and fail, and today, as you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur, we're talking a lot about entrepreneurs, and I think the reason that, or one of the biggest reasons folks fail, is the consistency of not just over time, the consistency of the things that they do, but the daily things that they do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're all over the place. Like they keep trying things, and then after like 2 weeks when it doesn't work, they go try something else. Then after 2 weeks it doesn't work, they go try something else.
Yeah.
And then there's no consistent build up to build, I guess, a discipline in order to achieve. How, like when you're working, and we'll jump into Launchpad a little bit in a second, but when you're working with folks, how do you teach consistency? Do you just say go be consistent, or is there like, it's something that I struggle with sometimes as I'm coaching and doing business coaching as well, is I guess the fear of not succeeding stops some folks sometimes from
Oh,
succeeding.
absolutely. Yeah. I tell a lot of the founders when they first come in, and even my, fencers when they come in for the first time, I'm like, okay, what is the goal that you have? For my fencers, it was like, well, I want to go to, fence at college. I want to go fence at a Harvard, a Yale, a NYU, and Notre Dame. It's like, okay, with founders, it's like, okay, well, what is your goal? Well, I want to be able to do $100,000 in annual reoccurring revenue. Okay, let's take a look at the activities that is going to allow you to achieve that, and how many successful activities need to happen. Now let's talk about how many repetitions you have to do to get those successes. Initially it might be, okay, you might get one yes in, say, 100 conversations. You're going to learn stuff, but you still need to have the repetitions to be able to take what you've learned and then perfect it. I talk to a lot of our tech entrepreneurs about, doing a pitch, and they're like, oh my God, I can't do a 3-minute pitch. I'm like, yeah, you can. You just got to whittle it down to get rid of all of the stuff that somebody doesn't need to hear, that you're interpreting is that they must need to hear. It's like, no, I do a pitch for the Launchpad that's literally like 30, 40 seconds long, and people go, how do you do that? It's like, you cut away all the stuff that doesn't matter. I mean, people will make excuses all day long of why not to work out, or why not to eat right, or why not to go to practice, or why not make another phone call, or why not go to a networking event. It's like, okay, everything is in reps. And fencing, a big thing, kind of like boxing, is footwork. All of my beginners are like, oh my God, I hate footwork. I just want to have the blade and beat people with it. I want to be D'Artagnan. And then they go, and after they do the first few months of footwork, then they go to compete and they don't get the results that they want. And then they come to me and they're like, okay, Maestro, it's like, what do I need to do? It's like, well, the secret is, and they're like listening, like, okay, what's the secret? I'm like, we have to go back to fundamentals and we got to go by the footwork.
Yeah.
And they're like, shit, you mean all the stuff in the very, very beginning is what's going to make me make a national team, make an Olympic team? It's like, yes. I say, you win the match with your feet. You just happen to score the points with the weapon. And they're like, okay. And if you talk to anybody in boxing, same thing. It's like, you win the boxing match with your feet. You just happen to score punches with your fists, and it's so many things as far as entrepreneurs, same way. It's like, okay, you want to do millions of dollars of revenue. Great. Okay. How do you keep your customers? How do you outreach your customers? How do you get someone to refer you as a customer? So you're not spending money on marketing. You should have it so that you do such a great job providing somebody a service that somebody else is like, oh my God, this was like the best meal I ever had. You need to go to that restaurant.
Yeah. Well, when I think about what you're saying is, these things, the fundamentals of doing things, and so even the soft skills that people don't want to work on, right? So you'll somebody will come to me or to you, and they'll say, "Well, I want this, this, and this. I want to be an Olympic champion, or I want to be this," and you go, "Wait a minute. There's these things that you have to do consistently, daily, in order to become that person who's capable of doing it." That's why I have the becoming the first, because I think about something. Right now I'm working with some young ladies that are saying, well, I tell me how to do this. Tell me, how do I use AI to make my website? How do I, do this to make sure that I have my budget right? How do I design all this? And I'm like, what do you do every day? Like, when you get up in the morning, what is your routine? And if you're telling me you start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon every day and you go to 5 o'clock, well, then we're going to have to work on your daily activities,
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter how much AI makes your website. If you don't have these daily routines and these daily disciplines that allow you to become the person who can, well, I want to make, I see a lot, I want to be the boss, or I want to make $1 million right away. And
Mm-hmm.
no, you don't get to do that yet.
No.
You really don't.
I joke around when people come to me and they're like, oh, I want to, be, a national champion, an NCAA champion, Olympic champion,
Yeah.
or a successful entrepreneur. I laugh at them because they're like, okay, well, and they go, what, you don't think I have the ability? I'm like, no, I absolutely believe that you have the ability, but you're asking me the wrong questions. They're like, well, what is the question I need to ask you? One question I ask everybody is like, what are you willing to sacrifice? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, are you willing to put in time? Are you willing to spend the money? Have you talked to your significant other and told them that every weekend you're going to be out competing? Are you going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and train before you have to go to work at 9 o'clock? If you're not asking me what is required to be sacrificed to attain, whatever the goal is, whether it's being a successful entrepreneur, Olympic athlete, NCAA champion, then you're not really mentally prepared for, as we say in the military, the suck that's about to happen. You've got to get to the point where you're like, running towards the fire. I joke around, firemen, amazing people. They're the ones that, everybody runs out of the burning building. They run into the burning building. It's that level of sacrifice to go, okay, this is my purpose. And that purpose requires sacrifice. And unless I am willing to sacrifice who I was yesterday for who I want to be tomorrow, then I've got no business pursuing this dream. So.
Well, and there's two time calculations, and get me if you're wrong. There's the time that you got to spend doing it, or like you said, every morning at 5:30 and getting up and training like a Rocky movie or something like that. But then the other time increment is how long do you have to do it for?
Right.
Talk to me about that second time increment, because that's the one I think people miss. They're willing to get up at 5 in the morning for a month. You know?
Right. And for a lot of people, especially with fencing, I tell parents, I tell people, I said, you're going to feel like you're banging your head against a wall sometimes for 2 weeks, 2 months, sometimes a year. But at a certain point, it will click for you. And for everybody, it's different. Every skill, everything that you do, everything that you learn, whether it's an athlete or an entrepreneur, certain things will click. And then, we joke around in the entrepreneur world, the flywheel starts to happen.
Mhm.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I understand. Okay, I've got to sacrifice this, but it achieves and makes the needle move or the rock be pushed uphill, creates the next activity, which drives and creates momentum for the next activity. And then it becomes easier and easier and easier. The hardest thing for people is, okay, don't let off the gas. It's like, okay, once you start achieving that success, I tell people, it's like, okay, you made a phone call, you closed the sale. You don't get up and celebrate and run around the room. You pick up the phone, you use that enthusiasm, and you make another phone call. Momentum, needs momentum. So
Yeah. Well, and that's, I guess it's hard because I'll have like kids that watch, we kind of grew up where there wasn't as many movies as there are now.
oh
And now
yeah.
there's all these movies that, and we had to go to the actual theater to watch them because there was
Yep.
like 4 channels on our televisions that you could watch something. So they watch all these movies, and a movie takes 2 hours, right?
Yep.
But they don't realize, like, I watched the Jesse Owens story, or I watch, whatever it is.
Yep.
There's probably some good fencing ones that are out there, and realize that took years. It wasn't
Mhm.
like, it just took. I showed up in 2 hours and get it done. And I think our time gets, I guess, screwed up in our mind that oh, they did it and we achieved and we were able to get to our highest pinnacle. Because like you said, once you hit that flywheel and you start getting momentum, well, now you're at momentum at a different stage. And now, so you got at that
Oh
stage,
yeah.
you got to move more. And now you get to this stage and there's a little bit more momentum. And,
Yep.
is there a secret to keeping momentum that you've been able to share with folks that, because you said don't let off the gas, but I
Well,
think
I tell people you have to get into the mindset of being uncomfortable. If at
okay.
any point in time you suddenly go, "Oh, I'm comfortable," then you're now in the wrong spot.
Ooh, I love
You
that.
have to literally crave of being in the deep end. You need to crave being uncomfortable. When you're sitting there going, "God, I'm uncomfortable that I don't know or I have not achieved," then you're in the right spot. I joke around with people. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room.
Yeah.
So, if you're at a place in your business where you're feeling comfortable and there's nothing pushing you, then you're probably not pushing yourself enough. Now, granted, everybody that we talk to, we define and say, okay, you tell us what success looks like. Because if you don't know what success look like, then sometimes you're kind of, running on a hamster wheel. If you have a defined goal, you have a defined exit, you have something that you want to achieve, great. Know what the end looks like. Know what done looks like, because that's kind of your navigation point to make sure that the activities that you're doing is driving you towards that goal. Military folks, elite athletes, people doing sports for exercise, that's great, not a problem. But if you're trying to achieve a goal, get a scholarship, make a team, you know, make the Olympic squad, anything like that, then okay, make sure that the activities that you're doing is kind of, pushing you towards that purpose. So, my biggest thing I tell people is if you want to be the best at whatever you're doing, whether it's sports, military, business, get comfortable being uncomfortable. So,
I love how you said what success looks like, because I think that needle moves as you get closer to that, whatever that original one was. I mean,
oh
I
yeah,
guess somebody can say, I want to be, let's say they're an actor. I want to be the most, make the most money of any actor in the history of all time. I mean, if that's what success looks like, then the sacrifice has to be tremendously huge. And we
Mhm.
need to dial it back to, okay, how about let's just be an actor and get some parts?
Right.
That's what
I've met actors that were like, my biggest claim to fame is I was able to raise 5 kids in a family and be able to put a roof over their head and food on their table and work all the time and not have to collect unemployment. I'm like, awesome. That was his life goal, to be a actor that worked all the time. It was able to provide for his family. He didn't want to win an Emmy. He, didn't want to be, only doing movies and maybe not working for, 7, 8 months, a year at a time. He just wanted to stay consistently working, whether it was on sitcoms or commercials or anything like that. He wanted to stay working.
Gotcha. And then you think maybe after a few years of doing that and know that you're good at that, then okay, do we move the needle to something else, or they're comfortable? Like you said, if you get comfortable, then now if you want to move to that next level, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable again.
Right.
It would be that,
and that gets into, with a lot of the folks that I work with, it's like, okay, we want to know what done looks like. We want to know what success looks like. What is, and we tell the tech founders all the time, it's like, you need to know what your exit is when you're ready to sell and when you're looking to exit the company. And they're like, well, why do I need to know that? I'm like, well, if you're trying to raise money from people that are going to help you build this company, if you don't have an exit in mind, they're never going to get their money back. And if you never plan on selling your company, you're not looking for an investor, you're looking for a donation. And there's a huge difference between the two. And I've had people come into our program and they're like, well, I want to hand this on to my kids and have it be a legacy business. This, that, and the other. I'm like, great. Our program isn't for you then. And they're like, oh, okay. So.
When I think about like associations and people, because as I'm thinking through the people that you're telling me about and what does success look like and being uncomfortable, I think of a person like Oprah Winfrey or Elon Musk, where I still think they're uncomfortable. You would think there's no way with their life that they could not be comfortable with their life, right?
I mean, you sit there, you look at Elon Musk, it's like, okay, richest guy in the world, but he's a guy that, for whatever reason, it's like, I see problems and he says, well, I'm going to go fix them. I mean, here's a guy that didn't have to go work for the government, didn't have to work at Doge. People are firebombing Teslas and stuff and, trying to burn dealerships down. It's like, who signs up for that abuse? You're the richest man in the world. It's like, well, he's somebody that goes, you know what? I see a problem. It's wrong. And you know what? I can wait for someone else to solve the problem, or I have a skill set. I may be able to help. That those are people that I look at and go, wow, I just kind of, pale in comparison. I think I solve problems. And then I see these people. I'm like, okay, I'm literally just picking up the litter outside. These people are like, saving lives, saving a country. It's like, wow. Okay. So,
So talk to me a little bit about associations though, because in order to have some of those visions and then to be able to grow, you said, earlier you said, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. That means you have to go seek out better rooms.
Correct.
And better people to be around. So how do you find those, or what do you, what's the process there?
So for me, it's being transparent and telling people, hey, I want to achieve X and I don't have any of that knowledge whatsoever. And then, reaching out to other people that you see that are successful, who are in those roles. For me, getting into venture capital, which is the newest thing for me, it was like, okay, I was training entrepreneurs to do high growth tech startups and everybody had the same problem. Well, there's no venture capital money in South Carolina. There's no pre-seed money in South Carolina. So I went to a bunch of people that I knew that had successful ecosystems. And I'm like, how do you solve this problem? And they're like, well, you go get the training and then you convince people to run a fund. And I'm like, well, where would I even learn how to do that? And they're like, well, there's this thing called the Decile Group and they have VC labs. And I'm like, oh okay. And and I joke around. I've gone through that program and I joke around every time I'm on a Zoom call. I'm like, they go, does anybody have any questions? And I'll raise my hand and go, okay, The dumbest guy in the room has got a question that nobody else is willing to ask, so I'll ask it. So, they joke around. They're like, here's Blake, the anointed dumbest guy in the room. And it's like, I have no problem doing that. I'm like, because people will really like overemphasize what the solution is. And then if I say I don't know, then they're going to give me a whole bunch of extra information that I may never have asked for, that now I get more information that I needed before. And one of the ways that I get good at doing stuff, and I tell at least all my fencing students, is the best way to ingrain that and become an expert in it is now go teach it to others. And that is one of the things that a lot of people, I don't think, realize that is the secret sauce in becoming an expert in anything, is once you have the knowledge, start trying to reach out to other people to train them on the idea. So,
yeah. Now that teaching portion of it becomes so important for your ability and your own growth to be able to, because then you find out all the holes that you didn't know.
Right. Yep.
And one of the things in being able to do that I think stops people too, and maybe you can talk to this a little bit, is, so let's say you begin to teach, and I can remember when I started as a professor that as long as I was a week ahead of the students, I was okay. Right? As long as
one lesson ahead of the other folks. Yep.
Yeah. But there's so many people who are getting ready to get ready. It's like they have to have everything perfect. They have to have all the ducks in the row. They have to have all the materials. They have to have everything. And then they never get started because they never have everything.
Oh, and we say the same thing in tech all the time. It's like, look, if you're waiting to launch your website, your business until it's perfect, you're too late.
Yeah.
We joke around in tech and we say, okay, everybody's baby is ugly. Send it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Have people tell you what's wrong with it, why they don't like it, get that customer feedback, and then work from there. I tell all my beginning instructors that I train in fencing, I'm like, there is nothing that you're going to screw up that I can't fix. And taking that weight off of their shoulders, they're like, oh, so I can just go out there and do stuff. Yes, do something. One of the sayings that a lot of people say about me, it's like, you might not like the way I do things. Hell, I don't like the way I do things sometimes, but I like my way of doing something more than I like your way of doing nothing. So
yes, that is so cool. As I've been, helping people begin to do podcasts, and I'm, and they're trying to get everything to get ready, and I'm saying you need to do a podcast. Well, because I think most people who do a podcast have never got to 10 episodes. I think it's like 90% of people.
Yeah, I when you told me you had like over 200, I think like 90% of the people don't get past the third one. It's like this ridiculous number. I was like, wow.
Yeah, and you start asking why. Well, because nobody's watching, and I'm like, you don't want anybody to watch when you suck at it, right? Because you have to learn how to do this. There's this lady that I'm going to start it, but she's got an excuse for everything, and she just talks and talks and talks. I said, the reason you need to do a podcast is because you need to learn how to not talk.
Yep.
You need to learn how to listen and not talk.
I tell my founders when they start dealing with their customers, I'm like, look, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yes.
You're supposed to listen more than you talk, and then they give me a hard time. Like, well, you do a lot of talking. I'm like, well, yeah.
But you got something to say. I mean, and that makes sense for other people to be able to grow because you've thought through the process. I mean, I'm not saying don't talk. I'm just saying don't ruminate on a whole bunch of stuff that nobody wants to hear, or I guess they process out loud in the middle and everybody's just kind of standing there waiting for the process to go through, and you just go, wait a minute. No, if you would listen, your answer is right there. You don't have to ask somebody a question and answer it for them.
Right.
Which seems to happen so much that they'll ask a question that, like you said in a group where you raise your hand, in a teaching moment, you're asking the question and then let them answer it, right?
Yep.
But I know you've seen those students who ask the question and it takes I don't know, they want to tell you their whole life story as why the questioning, and the person's like, what's your question? Because I really
Right.
want
It's
to
like,
answer.
what is the point? Just get to what is it you want me to solve and do? I don't need a diatribe of everything that's happened throughout your entire week. I just need to know what this
Yeah.
question is.
Well, I tried this and I tried that and I didn't get to this. And your question is, let me answer that, and then we
Yep.
can help you move on. And so that's why I say everybody should have a podcast at least for a while, just so they can get good at asking questions and then good at being quiet and listening, and then being able to take something from it and create a solution. So it is so fun as you're going. Tell us a little bit about the business that you have started and how it's working and why you did it, so we can learn even more about you and
So
you're helping folks.
so for me, 5 years ago, when I launched Tax Titans, which was a fintech company that I had an idea to do, I didn't have any help in Greenville. There was no infrastructure. There weren't the resources that were there. So, I drove 2.5 hours up to Charlotte, 2.5 hours down to Atlanta, found ecosystems and people could help me. So after I learned and had all those scars, they joke around, be the person that you wish that was there to help you.
Okay.
So for me, it was like, okay, I got the knowledge, I got those relationships, and I would run into people in the greater upstate Greenville area that needed those types of things. So I became that person that I wish I could have found 4 years ago. And then it started to, what we say in tech, started having product market fit. And people are like, well, could you run a course? Could you do a program? And I had been through multiple programs. So I just went to the people that I went through the programs with and said, hey, can I use your syllabus? Can I do a hybrid model of what you're doing? What is it they say? The greatest form of flattery is imitation. So, I was like, I'm willing to give you credit. And they're like, no, absolutely. Love to help people help others.
Hmm.
So they were kind enough to do that. And then it started with Greenville, then became Columbia, then Myrtle Beach. We're launching a cohort in New York City, of all places,
Wow.
in June. Yeah. So, it's the number of people who have the desire to, want to solve a problem is huge. And nowadays, in the age of AI, you don't have a $200,000-$300,000 barrier of entry to create something to solve a problem.
Yeah.
A $20 a month Claude or OpenAI and ChatGPT, you got it.
Hmm.
Um, and so from that aspect, what people need is those fundamental skills. How do you set up the business? How do you set up the accounting? How do you scale it? How do you talk to the customers? How do you know you're creating the right product? How do you know that you're charging the right price for it?
Hmm.
If you're not charging the right price, you might be having, huge scalable growth, but you're like running into the line of bankruptcy because what you're charging and what you get for the product don't match. And everything in between. I mean, we've had people that come in and we joke around. If you've got an idea and a napkin, you're the perfect person to come into my program.
I love
If you come in and you've already got all the bugs, whistles, you've already got this entire mindset that you know everything, I am not your program.
it. Hmm.
So so we've had people that have done great. They came in, idea in a napkin with within 7 months, they've raised $500,000 to $1 million in seed money, and they're often running to the races. I've got some people that like developed a product, they have bootstrapped the entire thing. They don't want money. That's fine, because when they have an exit, it's all theirs. And everything in between. And it's watching people get the validation that their idea has some merit is literally 99% of what it takes to succeed. To have somebody actually believe in you. Our first cohort, we had people that were in there. It's like, well, how long have you had this idea? And they're like, oh, for about like 2 or 3 years. I'm like, well, how come you haven't done anything with it?
Hmm.
They're like, well, nobody's really given me permission to do it. I'm like, all right, well,
Here's
now the
permission.
Padre Spirit of Sancti Appealing. You have permission, go do it. And
Let's do
then the
it.
next week they came, they're like, oh, I have a whole website, I have everything built. I was like, oh my
Ah, so
God. It's like
cool.
you've been sitting on your ass for 2 years because you were waiting for some outside person to, give you
Christen
permission
you to,
to go
yeah.
be successful.
Oh
It's
my
like,
gosh.
how many other people are out there are just looking for someone to look at? I mean, and granted, family members are like, oh, here comes Bob. Bob has got every crazy idea under the sun. And they're like, don't try that. Just go get your regular job. Don't be an entrepreneur, so on and so forth. But, the minute you have somebody on the outside say, that's a great idea, you should go do that.
Yeah. I know I asked you about associations and getting into the right rooms. But I want to also talk about the opposite of that a little bit, because
There is definitely the wrong rooms.
the
Oh, yeah.
wrong rooms, and how do we avoid those wrong rooms and the associations of people that are those crabs in a basket, right? I mean, it's
So for me, one of the greatest, books, mentors, people that I've seen in the tech space that I think goes to any other space, any other industry, is a gentleman by the name of Brad Feld, actually in Colorado.
okay.
Is got the Boulder thesis. He is one of the founders of Techstars. He just wrote a book that is Give First,
Okay.
and that book is all about, hey, instead of being transactional with relationships, if you're trying to work with other people, you're trying to belong to an organization, what are they willing to give to you first to get you to come in? If they're charging you and they're not adding value up front for the relationship, then that's usually a good sign that that's a bad organization. If you can't find 4 people that go, oh my God, this organization changed my life, it moved the needle, helped my company succeed. If you can't find people that are willing to give that endorsement, then that's probably not someplace you got to spend your time or money.
Yeah. I love that. And then and then the people, sometimes the people that are bad for you might even be in your family.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, I can't even tell you the number of like songs or, YouTube videos that say, if you want to be successful, if you want to be, the top of your game, every relationship of everybody that you currently know, you need to distance yourself from. Because all of those people only know you for who you currently are. And they are going to regret and not like you for who you want to become. And if you're not willing to let go of those relationships and those people to become the person that you want to be, then you need to find new friends. If your friends and your people aren't actively cheering you, aren't actively helping you succeed to become the person that you want, it's kind of like an old pair of shoes. It's like, once the soles are off, it's like, get another pair. It's like, you outgrow it. Okay. You outgrow relationships, unfortunately, as well. So
yeah, I think I heard that in 5 years, the people that you spend the most time with now, in 5 years, those won't be the same people.
Right.
Like, it's just, now what he's not telling you to go divorce.
No, true.
He said every relationship, get rid of them all. He's not, I mean, there are relationships that are good for you, and those you get to keep. So,
well, and that's part of like what I tell people. What are you willing to sacrifice? Have you sat down with your significant other? Have you sat down with your kids and stuff and says, hey, dad or mom is going to go do this and it's going to require me to be gone and this, that, and the other thing, and have that conversation so that they understand what's being sacrificed, what the goal is and why. Because, if you've got kids, they have dreams. And they're hoping that, if they go after those dreams, that you'll sacrifice for them when that time comes. So, in that relationship, there's always that give and take, but just going and doing it without having that conversation, I have just watched it be a ticking time bomb. Yep.
Yeah, especially when you're putting it and you start taking money out of the bank account.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And then they go, what happened to that $10,000?
Yeah. It's like, I thought we were going on vacation. What do you mean you bought a new computer? What do you mean you're going on that trip?
Oh my gosh. And sometimes, especially some of the programs that like you just said, if they're not serving you first, if they're not giving you value first and they're just trying to say, hey, I'm going to give you value down the road,
Yep.
then without showing you, or yeah, you go, so many people that I've spent so much money and they get so discouraged
Right.
because they tried all these things.
And
I
we
asked
tell
her
that to all of our tech founders. We're like, you have to have a freemium version of what you're building.
Yep.
They're like, what do you mean freemium? You have to give your ideal customer something to test for free to make sure that they want to be doing business with you and the product or service that you're
Yeah.
offering. And if you can't figure out a way to give somebody, 7 days free, 30 days free, or a light version of whatever you're doing, you need to go back to the drawing board.
You need to go back.
Because you're trying to convert somebody from how they're currently doing something to a new way of doing things. And you could drop $100 bills all over the street. People are still going to look at you sideways and go, well, what's the catch? So.
Yep. Yeah. Something I say to myself every day, I say, dear Lord, give me the wisdom to do the things you put me on this earth to do in a way that pleases you and serves others. Mm-hmm. And I asked you a question. I brought up this question at the beginning. I want to ask it to you now. Is it possible to be in purpose and to do what you think you're called to do without serving others?
No, because, to have a purpose is going to have an effect, whether it's direct or indirect, on other individuals. And from that aspect, I don't think you can have a purpose without serving others.
Yeah. And maybe talk a little bit to you in your mind. What does it mean to serve others? Because you started alluding to it in freedom and different ways. What does it mean in a business sense or an entrepreneur or even an athletic sense to serve others?
For me, it's helping people achieve their goals. It's helping people become the best version of themselves that they can be. And sometimes a lot of that is identifying that someone has great potential, but they don't have enough confidence in themselves. And you got to kind of give them that booster chair, kind of like a kid at a table at a restaurant. It's like, you're capable of so many other things, but you talk yourself out of success. You put obstacles in your way so you don't achieve them. If we can just kind of clear the table, so to speak, you could get so much more done.
Yeah. When I think about, like, we're both coaches and mentors as well, and thinking about, you alluded to earlier, that folks are willing to talk to you when they know you're going to help others, when they know that helping people help others. And I think so many of us, are have been in the past or still are scared to approach other people to help them in ways. And maybe you can speak to this, because I don't think you walk up to somebody that is way above your level, your room, and say, I need you to help me because I want to help others. You don't get to go do that. What are some of the things you but I've had people do that, right? That just think, hey, I'm going to show up and all of a sudden you got to help me. Like, you're obligated to help me. And that's absolutely not the case. But you've been able to navigate that, where you show people, how to, show, like, how you went and talked to folks that you knew should be.
Oh, yeah. People. I mean, we've had some people that have haven't finished our program. So we've had people our program's 12 weeks long. I've recently just had somebody that went through 4 weeks. They're like, all right, I already know everything. Now just write me a check so I can, get to building this and serving customers. I'm like, that's not how this works. I'm like, you're going to go through these 12 weeks. You don't know what you don't know. And part of that experience is having to go through this. And then after we go through this, then we go to the next stage. And they're like, well, I think that I know this, that, and the other thing. It's like, okay, I have scar number 425 that you don't have. That tells you that if you go too soon, this is going to be the problem. It's kind of like, if, jumping out of an airplane, it's like, okay, you need to check your parachute, pack it, unpack it, repack it, and get it on because, I packed it 3 weeks ago. Yep. And then I jumped out of the airplane and realized I forgot something on the way out. And oh, wait, I'm outside of the airplane. I'm 3,000 feet up in the air. oh, well, so,
I
you know,
can't imagine. Yes.
yep. I joke around. It's like jumping out of airplanes is perfectly safe. It's that sudden stop at the bottom that's deadly.
That's the difference.
So, so from that aspect, anybody that is in those rooms, you've got to understand that there is a process when you're dealing with people that have the knowledge. You've got to sometimes trust in the process as much as, and I'm a very impatient person. Ask my wife, she'll tell you. It's like, no, I need this now. It's like, okay, sometimes, it doesn't matter how many cooks you have in the kitchen, the cake still has to bake a certain amount of time. Otherwise, you're just going to be eating soup. So if you enjoy the cake, you've got to understand no matter how much time, energy, or whatever you want to put into it, it still needs to bake for a half hour. If certain things are just that way. And for a lot of, I joke around that I've never had a fencing student that, took 6 months of lessons and then like, oh, they just won the national championships. Yeah. It's not going to happen. Not in my lifetime, not in anybody else's lifetime. You're going to have to go out there, lose, learn, get back out there, lose, learn, get back out there, and the sooner you get out there and you start losing, then the sooner that you have the opportunity to be successful. So,
yeah, failure is part of success.
Yes. I mean, I joke around. There's so many memes and stuff. Failure is just another way to learn how not to do something.
Yes. Yes. And when you learn, that's not the time to give up. That's the time to dig in most
right.
cases.
Well, I tell the founders every time they figure out a way not to do something, that should be celebrated. It's like, oh, I figured out a way not to waste more time. Great. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, time is the only thing you can't get back. I saw a meme. I was talking to my wife the other day. I saw it and it really resonated at home. And they're like, oh, you don't have one life to live. You live every day. You have one death, but you have the opportunity to live every day. Every day is a gift. You live every day. You die once, but you live every day. So the people that go, oh, well, you only live once. That's untrue. You live every day. Every day is an opportunity to either have a good day or a bad day. So, and until you have that one time where you die, there's never a reason to, give up.
Wow. This has been an amazing conversation. And, as our time closes, I want you to, if there's anything we didn't talk about that you want to make sure that our listeners get, please share that with us. And then, as you do that, how folks can get a hold of you and, I'll just let you go.
Okay. So for us, getting a hold of me is Blake at launchpadtv.com, which stands for Tech Ventures. I joke around. Brad Feld had a day in Boulder, Colorado, where he had an Ask Me Anything. So, I kind of throw it out to people. It's like, hey, you've got any question, I've got a whole lot of people that I'm connected to. If I don't have the answer, I'll find the person who's got the answer. One of the things about running the tech company that I run is I learn about so many different industries and, pain points. I'm constantly learning. I'm like, wow, I never knew that was an industry. I didn't even know that was a problem, but here I am being the dumbest guy in the room and learning. But my biggest thing that I, want people to be able to take a look at is you are only limited by what you're willing to sacrifice and do. Until, you have that one day where you die, everything is a possibility. I don't care if, you want to dress around in a unicorn costume and run around the park. If that's your goal and what's going to make you happy, go do it. Life's too short. Don't be miserable. If you're doing something that's not making you happy, one of the things I say all the time, God gave you life and God wanted you to be happy. If you're not happy, then change it.
Change it. Amen. Amen. What is the right fit person that calls you that you are able to help? What does that person look like?
That 99% of the time, it's the person who's been discounted and isn't confident in what they're doing is a valid idea. So they come to me, they're like, I've got this, superpower, this unfair advantage because I know that this problem exists. And I'm like, that's awesome. Now put something together, lead, and become the solution for that. And they're like, can I do that? I'm like, yes, not only can you do that, but I'll help you get there. And for a lot of the people, it's the first time they've had anybody go, wow, somebody else believes in me. My family, like you said earlier, is always telling me that I've got crazy ideas and I should just shut up and have a regular job and, collect a paycheck. It's like life is so much more than that. So,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm sad that I was the guy, because the guy who comes to you is the guy who has a problem to solve. They know how to solve it. They just don't know. I mean, they know that they can solve it. They just don't know how to show others how to solve it.
right.
And I can remember, like in college, I had a buddy that came up with ideas all the time, and we used to laugh at him all the time for all of his ideas. And I feel so bad now that I know what I know, because he would come up and say, "I'm going to make magnetic confetti. So after that parade, I'm just going to go with a big giant magnet down the street, and all the confetti is going to come here. It is a cleanup solution." Or I mean, he just had ideas like that all the time,
Yeah.
and they were so good. Now that they might have worked, they might not have worked, and then you find somebody who has one that somebody else comes up with later or uses it.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time. People are like, oh, I thought of that like 5 years ago. It's like, yeah, but you never executed.
You never executed. So you're the guy people come to when they want to execute, or
Correct.
they don't know how, or even to have the conversation about, is this worth trying to execute?
Right.
I think,
Yep.
like, this is the idea. I know there's a problem, and so I think I know how to solve it. I just don't have any clue how to do it. They're calling Blake.
Yep.
And they're saying, let's just start with the idea and see if it fits. Oh man, that's so cool. I'm so glad that you're out there helping people to be able to move forward in their ideas, serving others in the way that you're serving others. Give us one last thought that we can end our show on today that was just.
So I have a quote that people have coined, that's a Blakeism.
Okay.
So always think outside of the box, because a box resembles a coffin. It's where dreams go to die. So,
Ooh, I like that. Where dreams go to die. When that dash ends. Oh my
yep.
God. Well, thank you. Well, thanks for being on today. Thank you for sharing who you are with us. Again, if you haven't subscribed, your notifications, this is a fun show. We get some great, and I'm just telling you, some incredible people who come on. Blake, it's been a pleasure. I have learned so much. I got 2.5 pages of notes and Blakeisms, and I can't wait for us to talk again, because we will do that in some way, some fashion, somehow. Don't forget, I believe that you're God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. Let him just love on you the way that he needs to love on you today. And then go out and be great. You are born for greatness. The greatness that's inside of you needs to jump out and ooze on other people. And if it takes whatever your idea and to call Blake to make it ooze out, then make it happen. Last thing is, you are an answer to somebody else's prayer. So just be available. Somebody else is praying that you show up and that you can serve them in a way that only you can. So let God use you however you want. So you guys have an amazing, awesome, just incredible day today. And we will talk to you on the next one.